Hello everyone, and welcome to the 4th episode of The Dice Society. In case you're joining me for the first time, my name is Caio, and I'm the author of thedicesociety.com. This is a podcast about the MCDM RPG where I talk about its development, my playtest experience, and, once the time is right, first and third-party content being made for the game. Sorry for the wait, everyone. I was a bit busy with some stuff in my life, and there weren't many flashy new developments in the game, so it took me a while to get this episode done. To be perfectly honest, I expected to record a new episode every other week, or at least once a month, but life happens and development isn't always that exciting, so I think I'm gonna make an episode whenever I feel like there's something to talk about. A lot of people say regularity is good for algorithms and that sort of stuff, but I'm not sure I want to cater to the algorithm, and most of these people are basically guessing anyway, so new episodes will arrive precisely when they mean to. Now, on to today's episode. Over the past month and a half, Matt and James have talked about a lot of new stuff in the game, but it's still mostly minor tweaks to existing mechanics. So my plan is to give you all a quick rundown of these changes as reported in their Patreon posts, and then move on to the main topics of the day, tests and kits. As usual, everything we're going to talk about is subject to and probably will change, so don't get your hopes up if you really like any of the stuff I talk about. Cool? Cool. Let's draw steel and get started. The first news item for today is the company itself. Over the past couple of months, MCDM has focused on growing the team. They are hiring both a new producer and 2 developers, and that process has taken a toll on the development of the game. Now, they're not looking for applicants. They already have plenty of contacts that they are interviewing, and it seems like they're close to making a final decision. Matt has talked a lot about the hiring process, like the kind of task that they send to the applicants, but nothing about the applicants themselves. According to him, they flew out the finalists to MCDM headquarters in California and had each of them spend a full day talking to and being interviewed by the team. Matt and James both expect that after the devs are hired and onboarded, development will really pick up the pace. I, for one, am excited to see the team growing and more people getting involved with the game. Next up, the team is back to testing resistance rolls. Last time we spoke, resistance rolls were gone because they thought power rolls were enough to regulate harmful effects. In that framework, instead of the defender rolling something to avoid a harmful effect, the attacker's power roll determined how bad the effect was. Roll low and no effect is applied. Roll high and the defender becomes slow, stunned, whatever. Mathematically, this does work, but players didn't feel very good about not being able to resist these harmful effects. Now the team is testing an arrangement where the defender makes a power roll and the attacker subtracts their main characteristic from the result. In this framework, the defender rolling low is what makes them suffer said harmful effect. The team is also talking about wealth. What is the role of wealth in a heroic RPG? Should the heroes really be counting every copper coin that they come across? What are the benefits of being wealthy? These are all questions that Matt goes into detail in his last Patreon post. For the moment, it seems like wealth is going to be like a perk, something that grants your hero some extra narrative options, but no real mechanical benefits. We'll have to wait and see. There are many other subsystems being designed and they all interact with each other, so we probably won't get a fleshed out wealth system for a while. Next up are monsters. Matt streamed himself working on monster rules. He went into detail over Flea Mortal's roles and thought hard about how these could change in the finished game, if there were any extra rules that needed detailing, and especially what each role will mean in the context of a tactical game. For example, he came to the conclusion that the game might need a bully role that pushes heroes around. A role like this is important because positioning matters in this game, so a monster that moves heroes away from strategic positions is as effective as a monster that just focuses on dealing damage. And speaking of monsters, Both James and Matt seem to be trying out some new ways to organize encounters. There isn't a lot of detail on this, but Matt mentioned that they wanted to simplify the burden of running encounters for the director. This would mean having an encounter sheet instead of multiple monster stat blocks for each encounter. An encounter sheet would include every monster in that battle and display them in a way that makes it easy for the director to quickly identify which monster is useful in each situation. You would be able to quickly glance and see the ranges of every monster, their damages, and etc. Again, this is very preliminary, but it's good to know that they are trying to make the director's life a bit easier. And lastly, James seems to be trying out some new dice for the power roll. According to him, in a recent Twitch stream, 2d6 was a little tight when you factored in characteristics and circumstantial bonuses. Right now, it looks like power rolls will be moving to 2d10. In this framework, Tier 1 corresponds to an 11 or lower, Tier 2 to 12 through 16, and Tier 3 to 17 or higher. The team still doesn't quite know for sure how critical hits are going to work, but they seem to be testing natural 19s and 20s. However, there's been no official update on this, so it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if the math changed completely before the next episode of this podcast. Well, that was a lot of news. Now that we've gone through every topic, we can move on to tests and kits. Let's go. As of this writing, tests are the equivalent in the MCDM RPG to D&D's checks. The director sets a difficulty, asks for a test, and the player makes a power roll, adding, of course, the specified characteristic and a skill in case that's relevant. If you need any refresher on how power rolls work, go back to episode 3, where I explain the concept in detail. From now on, I'll assume you understand how they work. The first difference between MCDM's tests and D&D's checks is in setting the difficulty. In D&D, you usually choose a difficulty class and the player has to meet or beat it in order to pass the check. Here, at least right now, the director either sets the difficulty as challenging or severe. You can see that there's no easy difficulty, and that's on purpose. If it's easy for the heroes to do something, then the director is encouraged to just let it happen. There's probably no consequence for failing an easy test, so there's no necessity to call for it. In a challenging test, you succeed if you roll a Tier 2 result. If you roll a Tier 1, then you fail. And if you roll a Tier 3, then you succeed with a reward. A severe test, on the other hand, requires you to roll a Tier 3 in order to succeed. If you roll a Tier 2, you fail. If you roll a Tier 1, then you fail with a consequence. Independently of the difficulty, rolling a crit is automatically a success with a reward. You might have noticed that I mentioned rewards and consequences. These are up to the director to determine, and they might be narrative, mechanical, or even involve some tokens. In the text describing failures with consequences, they mention failing to climb a wall and falling to take damage, failing to sneak by cultists and being immediately attacked, being arrested when trying to bribe a guard, and so on. If the director isn't feeling particularly creative, they can choose to gain a Doom token. These aren't detailed in the Patreon posts, but I imagine that they give monsters some kind of benefit. On the other hand, successes with the rewards are described as passing the test and gaining a little something extra that helps the hero. It might mean that other heroes succeed without having to roll, getting more than what you asked for, and so on. Again, if the director isn't feeling particularly creative, they can reward the player with a fortune token, which again, hasn't been described. A really interesting aspect of tests in the MCDM RPG are tests made in opposition. Do you know how in D&D there's always this weird moment when you're not sure whether to have your players roll or use their passive stats? For instance, when an NPC is trying to sneak by the PCs, do you roll for the NPC's stealth? If so, what's the DC for it? Is it the result of the player's perception roll, or is it their passive perception? Well, as far as I know, there's no correct answer in 5th edition rules. But there is one in the MCDM RPG. In general, heroes are always the one making tests. For instance, if a hero is trying to sneak by an NPC, the hero makes a test to sneak. As a rule of thumb, if the NPC has a higher intuition than the hero's agility, then the test's difficulty is severe. And the same happens if the hero is opposed by more than one creature. Otherwise, the test is just challenging. If, however, the NPC is doing something that the heroes aren't aware of, then the NPC rolls. The difficulty is set in the exact same manner as I've just described. That's it. Having no passive scores means that there is no ambiguity as to whether you have to roll for an NPC or not. I particularly found this very intuitive and straightforward. Obviously though, there are situations in which the heroes have to roll in response to something happening outside of their control. This is called a reactive test. If there's a hidden door or trap, for instance, then the director asks the heroes for an intuition test in order to determine who notices it. Again, no passive scores reduces the ambiguity. This means that technically, there's no way for a trap to hit the heroes without having them roll something first, which does remove some of the surprise. But in my experience, having a trap hit the PCs purely based on their passive perception doesn't feel very good anyway. My players always ask me if they wouldn't have been able to notice the trap because their passive perception is like 1,000. Even in Baldur's Gate 3, characters automatically roll perception every time there's something for them to notice. At the moment, the MCDM RPG works the same way. And by now, you might be wondering whether the only modifier you add to tests are your base characteristics, i.e. might, agility, etc. Well, no. Characters also have skills, which are specializations not related to combat. They are very similar to 5e skills, but instead of saying you are proficient in a certain skill, you just say that you have it. The main difference from 5th edition is that skills don't have default characteristics associated with them. If you want to threaten someone by breaking furniture, then you intimidate with might. If you're using purely verbal arguments, then you're intimidating with presence. This is an optional rule in 5e, but the default one here. As for the bonus a skill awards you, at the moment it's simply a +1. This might change with the new dice for power rolls, but it's probably going to be a static bonus either way. And what about the skills themselves, I hear you asking? There are plenty. In the PDF shared with the patrons, there's a disclaimer saying that not every skill is equal for every campaign, and that there's still a lot of work to be done fine-tuning the final skill list, but I'll go over them anyway. At the moment, skills are divided into 5 categories: crafting, exploration, interpersonal, intrigue, and lore. Crafting skills are specifically used during downtime in order to engage with the crafting system. This isn't detailed in any way, but you can imagine how a hero might be able to use this kind of skill to make extra items or gear. Crafting skills are alchemy, architecture, blacksmithing, fletching, which means making ranged weapons and ammunitions. I didn't know what that was. Forgery, jewelry, mechanics, and tailoring. Exploration skills are useful when exploring. Who would have thought? These skills help you overcome physical obstacles or interact with the world. Exploration skills are climb, drive, endurance, gymnastics, heal, jump, lift, navigate, ride, and swim. Interpersonal skills are used during social interactions. There's a bunch of those, and I never thought I'd be so excited to chat with an NPC in this game. Interpersonal skills are brag, empathize, flirt, gamble, handle animals, interrogate, intimidate, lead, lie, music, persuade, and read person. Notice how interrogate is separate from intimidate, so your heroes don't always have to break a chair in front of your NPCs in order to get information out of them. Intrigue skills are your standard shady rogue stuff. There are alertness, conceal object, disguise, eavesdrop, escape artist, hide, pick lock, pickpocket, sabotage, search, sneak, and track. I really do like some of these. For example, the separation between sneaking and hiding. However, I think some are too detailed. Do we really need a separate skill for escaping bonds and one for picking locks? Do we need a skill for being alert of your surroundings and one for eavesdropping on a conversation? I don't know. Lore skills are all about recalling information and are useful when interacting with the research system of the game, which also has not been designed yet. Lore skills are culture, criminal underworld, history, magic, monsters, nature, psionics, religion, rumors, society, and timescape. Again, I think this list is a bit overworked. Do we need a skill for rumors and one for criminal underworld? I'm not sure. Now that you know all about skills, we can talk about group tests and montage tests. Group tests are super simple. They happen when the director asks more than one hero to make the same test. If half or more of the heroes succeed, then the group succeeds. Simple as that, and exactly the same as 5th edition. There are some extra rules for adjudicating whether the group as a whole gets a reward or a consequence, but that's not important right now. As for montage tests, these are similar to 4th edition skill challenges and should be used, quote, when the group of heroes works together to accomplish a common goal that requires more than a single characteristic. In this scenario, the heroes take turns making tests that further their common goal. Each hero chooses a skill and explains what they're trying to do. The director sets a difficulty and the player makes the test. If they pass, then the director marks a success. And if they fail, the director marks a failure. The players go around the table, one at a time, for at most 2 rounds. Depending on the overall montage difficulty, the players might hit the success limit, in which case the montage ends and they are overall successful, or they might hit the failure limit, in which case the montage ends and they are overall unsuccessful. If the montage ends before they reach either limit, then it's a partial success. They get what they want, but there's a complication or cost involved. The rules suggest that easy montages have a success limit of 4 and a failure limit also of 4, while hard montages have a success limit of 6 and a failure limit of 2. I'm sure these numbers could easily change, but this gives you an idea of what the devs are thinking. And that's it for tests. Despite the system still being in flux, this seems like a very fun and well thought out aspect of it. As I've said multiple times, this could change, but I hope at least that skills don't have a default characteristic on the final game. This lets players be more creative and removes that nasty situation where the barbarian has to plead every single time to roll intimidation with strength. Now, let's talk about kits. Kits are the MCDM RPG's version of character equipment. Instead of buying a specific weapon, armor, or arcane focus, your character has something like a video game loadout. Before we go on, a little disclaimer. Most of the stuff I'll say from now on is based on the documents I received as a backup in a playtest pool game, so this is even pre-Patreon content. The whole topic deserves a truckload of salt. Be warned. With that out of the way, moving on. Each kit specifies what kind of armor you have, what kind of weapon you have, what kind of magical implement you have, and awards you with some kind of bonuses. The brilliant part is that they don't specify exactly what kind of equipment you use. They just say the basics so you can describe them however you want. If your kit has heavy armor, you decide whether it's chainmail, ring mail, plate mail, or whatever the frick you want. And when you find a magical item, you can add its benefits to your kit if it shares a tag with it. Say you find some dragon scale armor. If it's tagged as heavy armor and your kit includes heavy armor, then you can wear it and gain its benefits without having to worry if you're proficient with that specific kind of armor. So let's go through the available items that show up inside kits. Right now, there are 6 kinds of armor: no armor, light armor, medium armor, heavy armor, shields, and supernatural wards. As for weapons, there are currently 10 types: no weapon, bows, ensnaring weapon, heavy weapons, light weapons, medium weapons, polearms, thrown weapons, unarmed strikes, and whips. Finally, there are 6 materials for supernatural implements: bone, crystal, glass, metal, stone, and wood. While weapon types are pretty easy to understand, implement materials are more abstract. For example, having a metal implement increases the damage dealt with supernatural abilities, while having a wood implement increases their range. Kits might even mix implement materials, so you gain the benefits of more than one of those. As for the bonuses the kits give you, they're pretty straightforward. They can increase your stamina maximum, give you a speed bonus, add to your forced movement resistance, increase the distance of your ranged abilities, increase the reach of your attacks, improve the dimensions of your area of effects, and give you extra damage for melee weapons, ranged weapons, and/or supernatural abilities. Not every kit gives you a bonus on all of those categories, mind you. These are just every category that can be affected by a kit. Lastly, a kit gives you a signature ability. This is usually something very effective, yet flavorful, that relates to the fantasy of the kit. Now I'll be going through the names of every kit and giving you a short description of what the kit is. I'm not going to bother with every bonus or exactly what kind of equipment the kit gives you because 1, they're very likely to change, and 2, it's really hard to convey this all in audio. You're probably already pretty overwhelmed with all this kind of stuff. I just want to give you a sweet taste of what we can look for in the RPG. Starting with the martial kits we have right now. First, cloak and dagger. This helps you hide more easily and gives you throwable light weapons that can be concealed. Kisarmier, I cannot pronounce this, is for polearm users who want some extra reach and protection with medium armor. Martial Artist has no weapons, but gives you a bunch of extra speed and allows you to be, quote, the ultimate skirmisher. Mountain has heavy armor and heavy weapons. It deals a whole lot of damage. Panther is your Conan the Barbarian kit. You wear no armor, but use a heavy weapon so you can be fast and deal a lot of damage. Pugilist is like the Martial Artist, but it exchanges some speed for extra stamina. Raider is modeled in a Viking warrior, giving you extra speed and extra distance for your ranged weapons. Ranger is a balanced kit made for heroes who want to be the jack of all trades. Rapid Fire focuses on distance and allows you to shoot more than one arrow at a time. Retiarius has a polearm and snaring weapons, so you can restrain your enemies and then poke them with a stick. Shining Armor is the kit for knights, with as much protection as you can get and a medium weapon. Sniper is like the Rapid Fire, but it exchanges the ability to shoot more than one enemy at a time for extra distance and extra damage. Stick and Rogue has a simple reach weapon that allows you to move your targets with your signature ability. Swashbuckler is highly mobile and gives you a lot of extra damage to melee attacks. Lastly, Whirlwind uses a whip, which allows you to pull enemies towards you. Now, onto the caster kits. Blaster attacks from afar and can hit 2 targets at once. Druid adds some distance to your attacks and helps you resist forced movement. Hermit allows you to wear light armor and a protective ward, meaning you have more stamina than your average caster. Priest lets you wear armor and gives you a signature ability that helps your allies hit your enemies. Storm increases the area of your abilities and increases your speed. Ward Weaver protects you with some extra stamina and gives you a signature ability that helps you take even less damage. Finally, Wizard balances mobility and range, plus a little bit of extra area. And that's it for kits. Whew. Hope you enjoyed this short summary and that it made you excited for what's to come. I personally thought the martial kits were a little bit more evocative, but I think this is just the nature of the current draft. More interesting is that you can switch kits during respites, so you're not stuck with one forever. This can even help your character get a little bit of a taste of a different class without having to play it. And that's it for today, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode and the topic I chose this time. Make sure to check out this episode's description for links to Matt and James's Twitch accounts, Matt's YouTube channel, Matt's subreddit, MCDM's Patreon, MCDM's Discord, and my socials. See you all next time. Thank you very much, and goodbye.